All right, everyone, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Play along on our epic quest to research and review all 200 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online retro catalog. Today we'll be boomeranging our way through the seminal SNES classic, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and its Game Boy Advance multiplayer spin-off, Four Swords, in an episode we are calling Top Down, Downright, Done Right. I can see our guests already like it. I really struggle with this one, Mike. I really struggle with this title. But I'm happy with how it turned out because what a game. I mean, we're going to get all into it. Link to the Past is widely regarded as one of the best video games of all time. But Mike and I each played it for the first time ever for this podcast, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, so we got to call in some expert help. Please welcome back to the show, Twitch streamer extraordinaire, RiRiYells. How you doing, Riri? It's been way too long.
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. Our first Zelda episode is one of my favorites. And it's just, I've listened to it so many times. It was such a good time and I'm excited for this one.
Oh, I had such a good time. I'm excited to do it again.
Except for your hot take on Zelda 2 being bad. That was the one part I didn't
like.
I
got hot takes for you. I've been listening. In the meantime, I got a bone to pick. Don't worry.
We're going to fight it out. I love it. Well, I don't know if he's going to be backup for you or backup for me, but we'll also welcome back your longtime friend and my new friend, fellow Zelda streamer SSJ3Butch. Welcome back, Butch. Did you ever get your Natsume Game Master sweatshirt in the mail?
I have not yet, but I definitely need to go in and send him a picture because I need that sweatshirt.
Yeah, that's so wild. That was such a fun episode.
I don't think Butch is going to be on your side because I don't think Butch acknowledges the existence of a Zelda 2.
No.
Oh.
Zelda 2, we don't. It's kind of like the redheaded stepchild. We just don't believe it exists. Like, and in fact, I have a bone to pick with you, bringing up like Zelda 2. Like we go like Zelda 1 and then A Link to the Past, right? Like that's how it goes.
No.
And the fact that you brought up Dragon Ball in the Spanky's Quest episode and had the audacity to use a Dragon Ball Evolution picture, we do not acknowledge that movie even exists. Ooh.
Listen, okay.
Wow.
Derek, I know you're out there listening. Derek from the Underrated Movie Podcast. Dragon Ball Evolution is an underrated movie.
It is not.
It is not a good movie, but it is an enjoyable movie. And full disclosure, I am not a Dragon Ball fan. I don't have anything against it. I just was never my thing. So like, I got to enjoy it for how stupid and fun it was. Mike, okay, listen, Mike, get in here. I know you like Dragon Ball Evolution too.
I've never seen the first one, let alone Dragon Ball Evolution 2.
Mike, you're the worst.
That was not worth it. No. He liked it.
No, yeah. My bone to pick is significantly less problematic.
Okay.
It's because you guys didn't like Burger Time, and you're wrong. That's the best arcade game in an arcade.
In an arcade.
Yes.
It's so much fun. That's the one I seek out like a homing missile.
This is not the old arcade-a-roo.
The Game Boy version that we have on Nintendo Switch Online is rough, especially because there's but before you sling the hate
credit where credit's due, though. That's a good game.
It is a good game, yes,
Thank
but
you.
not the version we had.
Yeah,
the gray slabs.
Yeah, we'll talk about Game Boy versions today, huh?
We are going to get into it, yeah. So real quick before we dive into our games, Mike, you met RiRi back in college, and, I met Butch when we did our Forgotten Animal Mascot episode. RiRi, Butch, how did your all destinies cross? How do you guys know each other?
Oh, wow. It's pretty random.
Been years.
I found his Twitch stream about 3 years ago, 3 years and change.
Yeah, something like that.
And we played Among Us together.
Yep.
That was it.
That was a moment.
I think you came in when I was playing the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, if I remember correctly.
I do love Mass Effect, so that tracks. And then very shortly after, you played The 1,000-Year Door.
Yes.
And I absolutely adore that one.
Yep.
So you guys became friends and then discovered you're both Zelda buffs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
That explains a lot. Well, so, I think that's a perfect segue. Let's get into our first game for today, which is going to be The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, released on the SNES in 1992. Let me read the official description on the Nintendo Switch Online emulator. It says, return to an age of magic and heroes when an evil magician named, how do you guys say this name? Aganhim?
Aghanim.
Aghanim. Way off. When an evil magician named Aghanim begins kidnapping young maidens in Hyrule, in a
I'm
quest
about to log out of this meeting right now.
In a quest to break the imprisoning seal on Ganon, a young boy named Link is called upon to stop him. Link must venture into the twisting mazes, dungeons, palaces, and shadowy forests as he searches for the maidens and Princess Zelda. Traversing both light and dark worlds, he must navigate 8 dark dungeons, fighting evil enemies and huge bosses. Help our hero prevent Ganon and Aghanim from shattering Hyrule forever. Whether you are a young knight, a warrior in training, or an established legend, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past will delight. So hyped. Oh, guys, this game is going to be so exciting to talk about today. Let's get into the box art, because that was often people's first impressions here. We'll look at the Japanese box art released in 1991, because that was the first one to be created. RiRi, Butch, what's your take on this? What do you guys think of the original Japanese box art of Link to the Past?
I'm delighted to see the old 80s, 90s anime style drawn Link. He looks awesome that way. I think it's perfect.
That's funny, because in our other Zelda episode, you didn't like the Link being depicted.
I didn't. But this, it reads like the character is drawn in the game.
Yeah.
Like it just translates better. And of course, the graphics are a whole other level than the other two we talked about. But like, I feel like this one really works.
Yeah, we have Link kind of in the foreground. He's in this really cool battle stance. He has I think it's just called the Hylian shield, right? Isn't that what that shield is? He's got his sword, and then in the background, you got the Master Sword being illuminated by a single ray of light breaking through the Lost Woods, which, like, it's pretty dope. I like it. Butch, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it depicts when you get the Master Sword in the game, that you go through the Lost Woods, you get the sword, and then, of course, after that, the sun starts breaking through the trees, and you can see kind of that outline of the trees and everything on the forest floor. So it does a very good job depicting that moment in the game.
Yeah.
I thought it was one of the decoy swords.
Oh, those got you, huh?
How do we know that's the one?
So rude.
I thought that was so weird too. I was like, this couldn't be it. But it also kind of fun from a lore perspective. I got the sense that someone was trying to protect it. So fill the forest with fakes. Yes. But here's the thing. Is it better than the North American cover? It's so iconic. It's really just the gold box with the really dope Legend of Zelda logo on it. And, it's kind of a more confident cover, I think, because, like, you know what this is and you want it. Come get the Legend of Zelda Link to the Past.
It also matches the previous covers, the gold coloring, so beautifully. But it's like, it's adding more to it. It's that classic Z that we're used to, the way the Z is stylized with the sword and shield. And in my mind, I also cannot help but see the cartridge, the golden cartridge.
Oh, yes, that's right. When this was released.
It's iconic.
Right. And, I also like, as you mentioned, the previous two covers, it's kind of a combination of them in a sense, because the first one has a shield, the second one has a sword. Now we got the sword and the shield. So it's kind of the best parts of Zelda 2 and the original. And yes, there are good parts of Zelda 2. We'll get into that. So is which one better? They're both so good.
I'm going to go with the Japanese one.
Really?
It has more of a game flavor to it.
Yeah.
And at least for me, just putting Zelda in large letters isn't really a selling point. So I kind of want a bit more to it.
Okay, but you're not like a Zelda fan. I think if you're a Zelda fan, Zelda in large letters is a huge selling point.
I felt that was the implied point of that statement.
Okay. Gotcha. Butch, what about you? What do you think?
I think just because it does fit the theme, the American version is better, because you go back to the red lettering of Zelda, as she said, the stylized Z, you've got the sword and the shield, you've got that kind of gold background. The Japanese box art is good. Like, if it's just like, if this was the game that we got first, like, then I feel like that would be more appropriate. But because we had the two previous ones that were this way, I would agree that this is better.
So are we in a consensus we like the North American one, except for Mike?
I agree, though. The Japanese one is great. Like, if I was a kid looking at what to pick up and I didn't know what it was, the Japanese one is far more appealing.
And that's the coolest Link we've seen on a cover so far.
Yes, he's definitely
Yes,
the
so
best
far.
drawn for sure.
And it's cool because like one of the things I like about Link is that he is both formidable and vulnerable, you know. And so he does look like a young kid here, but like that sword looks razor sharp. That shield looks super dope. Like he's ready for it. So I like these cover arts and box arts. Let's get to some fun trivia facts here in our Knowledge is Nintendo Power section. It was developed and published by Nintendo, and director Takashi Tezuka returned, having also directed the NES original. And it was executive produced by Shigeru Miyamoto. First of all, did you guys know that this game, when it was in development, was for a moment going to be a party-based system, all of Final Fantasy? Have you guys heard about this?
More like a JRPG.
Yeah, it was going to have a party of characters, according to an interview that Miyamoto did in Swedish gaming magazine Superplay. A Link to the Past was at one point going to have other characters traveling with Link, including the protagonist hero, a wizard, and a girl.
Oh, we know what happened to the girl though, right, Butch?
Yep.
What happened to the girl? I don't know what happened to the girl.
She gets mean. Did you make it to the thieves' den?
Well, okay, are we getting to this already?
Well, I'm just saying that's the girl that follows you in the game. That did not turn out well.
Yeah. And when you get to the thieves' den and you fight Blind,
Blind, yeah.
Blind is disguised as the girl that follows you through the dungeon. So you take it. Yeah, that's where
So
the girl
yeah, she
ends
was
up.
a party member.
Yeah.
Doesn't pay to be Link's party member, I guess.
Mm-mm.
I think that's worth covering the inevitable of who has beaten this game.
Okay, do you want to get into that now? We can get into that now.
It's gonna be real fast.
Okay, Mike, have you beaten this game?
No, I tried and I got, I think, very far, but not far enough.
What would you say is very far?
2 maidens in the Dark World.
Oh,
That's over half.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because the Dark World's about the halfway point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, using the rewinds and the save states, I Nintended.
Nintendo.
Family computer.
Now, RiRi and Butch, you're both Zelda streamers,
Yes.
okay? Y'all have both beaten this game, but I'm only going to play the sound effect once for whoever of the two of you have beaten it more times. What do you think?
Does randomizer count?
Yeah, does randomizers count?
Say yes.
Ah, it's Butch.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'll play it for you two. So, Butch has beaten it more,
Nintendo.
Family computer.
but RiRi ain't no slouch. She's beaten it several times
I
herself.
beat it today.
Today to prepare.
Nintendo.
Family computer.
All right.
And I think this is gonna come up a bunch. Can you guys give a very brief explanation of what the heck a randomizer is?
Oh,
yeah, that's a good
that's a
point.
great idea.
Yeah.
So in Zelda, you pick up items, and those items allow you further progress in the story. So in a randomizer, you randomize which items are available. You swap where all the places are. And so you have to figure out the logic puzzle of how to still beat the game, if that's your goal, getting the items out of order.
Whoa.
Does that make sense? Butch, you have more to add?
There's also difficulty spikes on how you want to do it, because you can change up, like where keys are located if you want to, because normally if they're like an easier one, you can just have them set. You can scatter those. Bosses can be scattered and changed if you want them to be.
You can change lots of parameters in a randomizer, and it's a way to make a game you know and love fresh.
Yeah.
So we are particularly fond of it for A Link to the Past.
Is this why people want a Zelda maker in addition to a Mario maker? Is because randomizer is such a popular way to play?
Randomizer scratches a different itch for the player in a lot of ways, because you don't have any say in where things go. The program is setting it all up. It's the logic puzzle and the dopamine hit of finding the thing you were looking for.
Yep.
Right. It's a little bit of gambling.
Yep, exactly. It's that gambling itch that
It's
you
a little
you
bit of a
scratch.
gambling itch. Exactly.
Is it sometimes impossible? Like the randomizer will make it so that you can't get to an item you need?
Yes, it can be if you set a no logic setting.
Mhm.
Right.
It's very possible to get locked out of a seed. You can use glitches to get yourself out of a tricky spot that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get through. But Butch and I know we always use a logic, so there is a possible way to beat the game. It may not be easy or fun, but it's possible.
Yep.
So playing these randomizers, Butch, would you say you've probably beaten the game like over 50 times?
Yeah, probably at this point.
What's your
Yeah.
estimate? Like, are you counting?
Oh boy.
Triple digits? 100?
I might have broken triple. because there've been times not only have I done it on stream, but like I'll be sitting here and like our group of friends will be in Discord and they're all playing something, and I'm like, you know what? I just want to do a rando, and I will load one up and just do one. And it'll take me a couple hours depending on my settings, and I'll just do it for the fun of it. So yeah, I could see it being in triple digits at this point.
You're well on your way if you're not there already, I would say.
Yeah, if I'm not there, I'm close.
It's been years now of playing randomizers, so chances are good.
And RiRi like dozens of times.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I would not say I've broken 50, but a good amount. It's really fun.
Since you guys know this game so well, do you know what it was called when it was released in Japan? It was not A Link to the Past. Have you heard this?
I'm trying to
it's
remember
it's on the ROM that we play, Butch.
Yeah, it is, because you have
because
to have
we play the Japanese
ROM.
It was changed for religious reasons.
Oh man, I can't remember.
No, I really couldn't say. It's written in Japanese, so it's not
That's true.
Romanji.
Yeah. You just could tell it wasn't A Link to the Past.
Right.
Yeah, it's too long.
So IGN put this in their top 100 games in a list that they made in 2007. If you're curious, Link to the Past was the 8th best game of all time.
That's right.
Right above Final Fantasy III and right below Super Metroid, which is the game we're going to play for our podcast.
Okay.
In Japan, it was called Triforce of the Gods, or the Gods Triforce, and they changed it in North America to avoid religious controversy. Similarly, the fictional Hylian alphabet replaced the Egyptian hieroglyphs in the Japanese version. Priests were renamed wizards or sages. And this is my favorite one, RiRi. I don't feel you're going to get a kick out of this. Do you know what the Zora flippers were called in the Japanese game?
Oh, were they just like fins or tails?
Finger webs.
Oh no, not finger webs.
Which is weird. Because Mike, you read the manual. Did you happen to catch what the manual well, you didn't read the Japanese manual, I'm guessing.
I did not.
The Japanese manual calls them webfoot. So I don't know how you go from webfoot to finger webs in the credits. It's super silly.
That's unfortunate.
It's a little unfortunate. It's weird, right? But I thought it was fun. Finger webs for sale. That's just got weird connotations.
Yeah.
I do think it's actually rather interesting that you talk about they removed a bunch in the game to avoid religious controversy.
It was sort of a policy of Nintendo America to just, de-religious things, but continue.
Well, it didn't apply to the manual.
What do you mean?
Or at least the manual that I went through, which talks about this in terms of, like, it even gives the explanation for pointy ears in the game for one of the races. The reason they have pointy ears is to hear God better.
Huh. And they use the word God.
I'll tell you, there's nothing like that in the dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually some really interesting stuff that it almost is making an argument for, like, comparative religious studies in terms of, this is the beginning of their explanation on this, is to set the stage for this adventure of the legendary hero of Hyrule, it will be informative to delve into the Triforce myth, an ancient epic about the creation of the world that is still believed in the land of Hyrule. Every culture has such myths and theories about the creation of their worlds, and it can be beneficial and entertaining to examine them in detail, for they often affect the present-day social structure. The legends say the mythical gods of Hyrule had as their chosen people the Hylia. These ancient people left scrolls that are the primary source of the legends.
Yeah, and it's like God's chosen people, and like, it affects the society, which, like, RiRi's making a face.
This is a video game, sir.
Right?
What?
But I want to point out, in our Zelda episode, RiRi, you launched into this whole, like, backstory lore thing. But it's funny, though, because, like, most of us have beaten this game. You don't really benefit from knowing
like that in here.
Yeah,
Where's that coming from?
Yeah.
It's got like 6 pages of, like, just this is the backstory of lore that impacts the game. And then just, like, the last, like, page or two is more directly, like, the start of the game.
Fascinating.
RiRi, is that why your headphones have pointed ears so you can hear God better?
I'm listening to God, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, not saying anything. You know who did say something, though? Chris Houlihan. Do you guys know about Chris? Yeah, Butch, you want to talk about Chris Houlihan? Give us the Chris Houlihan lore.
So it was, if I remember correctly, he won a contest, so that way he'd be featured in the game, and it ended up being that he got a secret room, and it's got a bunch of, like, blue rupees in it. And as far as I know, because we use this in randos to get free rupees, is in order for you to access it, it's supposed to be like like something didn't load right, and you end up in the room and then as you leave, you end up, I believe, coming back out your house. At least that's the way it is in the rando. I've not really ever done it, I think, in the main game. So yeah, it's just like a glitch room that you can get to get free rupees, and then that's pretty much the way it comes down to. If I remember correctly, I could be wrong on this. I don't think there was ever confirmed that Chris Houlihan actually existed. And it was just thrown in there.
There's a lot of, I mean, because he's never stepped forward.
Right.
And it didn't really start getting discussed in earnest until the early 2000s because, internet forums and Zelda fans coming together and all talking about this thing. And there's lots of like, well, where is this person? And what's interesting is that I watched a video about this. Nintendo Power, which is where the contest was held, was very known to publish and advertise its contest winners. It would put their picture in the magazine, it would talk about them, and make them little celebrities. For this contest, they never announced who won. And so a popular theory is that nobody won because the contest was too difficult. They only had about 2 months to do it. The original Final Fantasy was a brand new game. And so finding this mech might have been too difficult. So Chris Houlihan was just like a placeholder name.
What was the contest?
You have to find a war mech, which is a very, very rare enemy in Final Fantasy on the NES. And when Final Fantasy came out for the NES, it set the world on fire. It was a huge game for the original Nintendo. And this war mech enemy appears only on one bridge towards the end of the game, and you have a 1 in 64 chance to encounter it. So nobody knew where to look for it. And even if you got that far in the game in time to enter the contest, you still had a 1 in 64 chance of not even seeing it. So it is kind of interesting. It's one of the unsolved mysteries of gaming is exactly who is Chris Houlihan. And apparently Nintendo is not giving up the ghost. They're not telling anybody who it is. But I don't know. Hey, Chris Houlihan, I know you're listening to this podcast. How great. Dude, the podcast is finally going to blow up, Mike. The Chris Houlihan.
We have 7 listeners, and one of them is a mythic player from decades ago.
That'd be incredible. Well, guys, Mythic, right? Let's talk about this game and what makes it so great. RiRi, let's start with you. One of your favorite games of all time. Is it your favorite game?
No, I can't call it my favorite game. It's a little too hard.
It's very difficult.
It's a little too unforgiving for it to be my favorite.
But what makes it good?
It is extremely nostalgic for me. The SNES was the first system where I really could play the games myself. My mom and my brother helped me a lot in a lot of SNES games, but this was my first Zelda where like I got to play and I could move around and could actually do stuff, right? I was old enough. And it is iconic because it sets the standards for everything else that follows after. And as I grew older and as I kept playing Zelda games, like this only ever in retrospect became more special. Right? Yeah. Because all of the things that make Zelda special are here. If you like Zelda, this is like the beginning of, for me, where Zelda becomes what it is today. Like this is the roots of it right here. And it is so strong and it is so interesting and bright and colorful and the art is well done. The music is sticks in your head. I think the music probably the most nostalgic thing for me. So yeah, I cannot help but love this game. Maybe more than it deserves, but it's fantastic. It holds up so well.
I mean, Zelda is one of the biggest franchises in gaming history, and I don't think they nailed it from jump. I think the NES Zelda has a lot to forgive. That's why it was one of my.
You can see the thought, the intention. You can see.
Oh
it.
Yeah.
But this is where it blooms.
It crystallized, and it's aged so well. Butch, what do you like about it?
So kind of like with RiRi, even though I'm a little bit older, and I did start on the Atari 2600 gaming. The Atari and the Nintendo were my older sisters, so like they weren't officially mine. Like I could play on them and play those games. But when the Super Nintendo came out, I got that for my birthday, and like I remember RiRi talking about like her thing with the N64 in that commercial or that video where the kids are freaking out. That was me with the Super Nintendo. Like I open that box and I'm freaking, right? So this was one of the games, along with Super Mario World. This was like the quintessential growing up game for me. Like she said, I got to play this game. I got to discover everything. And like she said, again, like it just has everything that makes a Zelda game. You have to go through the dungeons. You have to find the items. You have to figure out where to go next. While, yeah, they're marked by the number of the crystal, you still have to figure out how to get there. And you have to find the secrets along the way if you want to make sure you get everything. And then one of the things that I distinctly remember was that the game came with a map, the fold out, you can unfold it. And because I didn't really have any friends in grade school, at lunchtime, that's what I was doing. I'd be reading the map, trying to figure out, okay, can I go here? Can I go here? To find those secrets like pieces of hearts or whatever. And I'd sit there and that's what I would do. And that's like that's the only time a video game has really done that for me. Because now, being older, we have the internet, we can look up a guide. But you didn't have that then. So you're actually sitting there with a physical map, like, what do I do? Where do I go? And that's what I distinctly remember. The music, like RiRi said as well, I don't know how many times I'll catch myself like doing laundry, doing the dishes, and I'm humming the theme song, not even realizing it. I'm just doing it because the music is so good.
It's amazing. And I just, I wish we could send a message back to young Butch who didn't have the friends and is studying the map and just tell him, like, one day you're going to have friends because of this game and you're going to do a podcast. I know that makes no sense to you right now because you know what podcasts are, but they're going to be so fun and dozens of people are going to listen. It's crazy because I had a really good experience with it, but it was fresh for me. It's Mike and I played it for the first time for this one. Mike, the original Zeldas didn't take with you. Did this one do better?
It did. Now, part of it is one of the things we talked about with the first Zelda was that it had this idea of you're supposed to play like with a community and failing that with a guide, apparently, which I was not told. This one, I was streaming. And so and this is a common enough game, I basically think I kind of got some element of that community interaction kind of thing a bit more real time because it wasn't, I tried some stuff for 3 hours and it didn't work and someone later told me what to do. I was trying stuff and failing and people would come in and let me know what I needed to do of, oh yeah, no, on that thing, you have to, this is the mechanic to figure out. I'm like, okay, now I'm on the right direction. So that was an interesting experience. And Butch was one of the people that was stopping in and just being like, yeah, no, if you're stuck on this, do this. So I was getting a chance to try stuff, but when it was clear that stuff was not working, I could kind of just be like, all right, I am doing this wrong. What am I missing?
Yeah.
And then I think the game itself is a bit more forgiving in that. So first of all, having a map that actually says, this is where you need to be going. Doesn't tell you how to get there, but at least having the fact that the map would put up icons of, you need the sword is somewhere over in this corner. You still have to find it, but you have a gist of where you need to be for various points. That really helps. And then if you die, you can kind of pick where you start back up. If you die in the dungeons, it will start you back at the beginning, but a lot of the things you had done would still be done. So it made it a lot easier to be like, okay, I have gotten this far and now I've got to start back over, but I just have to go a little bit further. So like for the Tower of Hera, I think that was that stupid boss at the end that I keep falling off.
Oh,
right?
the Moldorm. Yeah, Moldorm's rude.
It reached a point where I could get through the dungeon fairly easily because I had dealt with all the problems along the way. And so it wasn't having to really grind back through and barely making it to the end. After a lot of failure, I was at least getting to the end of it all right. And that really made this a lot more playable because I think the difficulty isn't having to keep redoing a thing that you're failing at. It's when you have to keep redoing something obnoxious that you can do because you fail at the next thing.
I mean, there's a lot of ways the game catches you when you start to stumble, right? The fact that when Link goes down, a fairy will pop out of the bottle and revive you, and you kind of have that comeback mechanic.
Which Twitch stream told me was a thing I didn't know it did.
Oh.
I mean, I didn't know either. I kept like rewinding every time I was about to die, and it's like little I know I had fairies. I had like 3 fairies in my pocket the whole game.
That's why we rush for bottles and randomizers so we can have those. Early game fairies are clutch.
Yeah, my favorite is when they don't give you your bug catcher's net until you're already in Ganon's tower, and at that point I'm like, well, I'm at the end of the game. Thanks for not giving me fairies this whole game.
Well, as RiRi taught us, though, the bug catcher net can be used to defeat one of the bosses, right? In Ganon's tower, the Aghanim, right, with the energy ball reflection.
You can bat it back with the net. It's not easy because it spins in a circle, but it will work.
It does work, yeah. But so yeah, I totally agree. I just think the game is just kinder to the player.
It felt more fair, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
More of a fair challenge. It's more of a reasonable challenge rather than just pointlessly frustrating.
Yeah, and it tells you too, like even after you get, Zelda out of the original dungeon there, and you're talking to the priest, they're like, go to Kakariko Village and find the elder, and then once you get to that village, you're like, he's not here, but I'll put on your map where he's at, and it puts a big giant X on the map that he's at Eastern Palace. And so this definitely, compared to the first one, definitely tells you a lot better what you need to do and where to go.
And it's great too because like to give you the full map at the start of the game. I wish more games did this because like you don't know what you're going to encounter. It's not detailed, but you can still look at it and they say, "Oh, go to Kariko Village." Well, I've never been there before, but looking at the map, there's only one village. Go to the lake. Well, there's only one lake, you know what I mean? So, I felt like I had my bearings a lot more and was using a guide a lot less. I mean, in the first two Zeldas, I couldn't progress without a guide. This one, I would do it for a while and then get stuck and eventually check just because I wanted to beat it for this podcast. But the way that the game is designed to facilitate your adventure and not frustrate you unless that's sort of part of the challenge, it's awesome. I think one of the other things that makes this game so much easier than the first two is just how much better Link controls.
It's tight. It's tight controls, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And like you can move diagonally.
Mm-hmm.
Just that little thing. It's like, okay, this feels less like a weird sliding puzzle and more like I'm exploring. And you can only attack, right, guys, in the 4 directions, but you can move diagonally.
Well, your
Correct.
boomerang can go in angles.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
your
true.
boomerang can, and then of course you have your spinning sword attack too as well. But yeah, if you're just doing a regular slash, it's the 4.
Up, down, left, right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Did other games from top down have the Pegasus boots? Was it in Link's Awakening? I can't remember.
I don't remember if it's in Link's Awakening or not.
I don't remember if they are or not.
It depends on the version too. I'll look it up.
What'd you call them though? Pee-poo pops?
Peggy boots.
Peggy boots.
So this is the thing with randomizers that we should talk about because we play these games so often and we get the same items over and over again. We go to the same places over and over again. They inevitably develop nicknames.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make a sort of sense, like Peggy boots, Pegasus, Peggy. Sometimes they're just funny things that have happened and they're almost an inside joke shared within a community.
Yep.
Sure.
So yeah, catch us if we say something silly because we're so used to saying.
The one that I'm guilty of is the elder that I was mentioning. I think his name is like Shao Ra. I can't pronounce it. So, but I've gone to taking. That's because I can't pronounce his name. So that's the one I do.
I mean, it's
They are in
problematic,
Link's
but only to Hylians. Yeah, they are. Yeah, but so I loved how early in the game you got this item, and just running across the map is really satisfying because you're able to traverse the map really quickly, but also Link is plowing over smaller enemies and just attacking enemies as he runs past them. It was the perfect, I thought, combination of like mobility without making you overpowered. And RiRi, this is one of the bones I have to pick with you. So RiRi just dumped all over Zelda 2. And Butch, you stay quiet for a second because I know you seem to hate it even more than she does.
You can't hate what doesn't exist.
Exactly.
There is no Warren Bossing say.
All right. Imagine there was a 2D Zelda that people underappreciated, okay? Just pretend. There's NPCs in that game, and you have to go on these little side quests, and you have to talk to them, and they give you little quests. And RiRi was like, that's not Zelda. That's very much this game. Is the side characters and no?
They're not quests.
They're not quests,
they're
though.
chats.
Right.
Yeah,
It's basically
they're
like
dialogue while they trade an item.
you have in front of you, just to set the picture for the people that's not watching on YouTube, the when you go into the house and you have the sick kid, or as I like to call him, the drunk lazy kid, because he's supposed to give you, the bug catching net if you show him a bottle. That's not a quest. Like, you can just totally miss over that if you want to, because there's other bottles. It's just, hey, you happen to have a bottle, here's my bug catching net.
Yeah, to me a quest is I need help with XYZ, go do the thing and I'll come give you a reward.
Exactly.
That doesn't happen in this, except for if you want to count the frog that you bring back to his brother for the Dwarven Smiths, but like that's so minor.
Right.
So is it that it's optional makes it so much better? Like all the little people interactions?
The fetch quest is like a JRPG thing, I feel like.
I get the impression it's not presented as transactional.
Yeah, it's dialogue, it's chatting.
Yeah.
Okay.
you're on your adventure and they might tell you where to go, but they're not the ones in charge of what you're doing. They're not asking you to do something and you do a favor for them, right? Like that's a quest. Like in World of Warcraft, that's how it happens, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll refer to like he wants you to get the green medallion and he'll give you something. You have to get the green medallion anyway.
Right, that's the story.
Right, it's part of the quest, regardless of whether or not he's like, "Oh, I'll give you the Pegasus boost." Like, yeah, it sucks not having them, and you can't really advance. But at the end of the day, like, you have to get it anyway, so you're not doing it for him.
At best, the trading sequences in later Zeldas, I will give you, that's definitely like side questy feeling. Especially if you get just like a heart piece at the end of it. Sure, that's a side quest. This one just doesn't really have side quests like that. Not in the same vein, if that makes sense.
It kind of does. I never really thought of them as different, but you guys clearly do. And you know what? You know better than I do. You played this game a lot.
It's opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, okay. I will remind you too, in randomizers, we turn off the dialogue, or if there is dialogue, it's very silly.
Yes.
So when I played through vanilla just for this, I was like, oh my gosh, they tell you where to go. I forgot they tell you where to go. Like when you were like, oh, he's in Kakariko, I'll put it on your map. I was like, oh, they put it on your map? I didn't know that.
Have you guys ever speedrun this game, like to see how fast you could beat it?
So kind of we are, I guess.
I mean, technically, I just did.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, speedrunning at our own pace, not like, trying to rank on leaderboards or anything, but yeah, kind of.
I mean, like, for instance, and I don't know if we want to jump into this yet, but playing with 4 swords, Mike was actually doing, I think it was his final one on Wednesday, and he was in Swamp Palace, and he was getting beat by these water bubbles. And I'm going to do some deep lore here. Well, in Ocarina of Time, the bubbles are called shabooms.
That's true.
And so in this one, I wanted to see if that was still the same name. It's not. Spoilers, it's not. Can't remember what they're called, but while I'm on the wiki looking at these things, I'm seeing bosses that I've not seen before. And I'm like, it's the water gibbo.
Water gibbo.
Yep. So anyway, so I'm looking on the wiki and I'm seeing these bosses that I've never seen before. And I'm like, what are these? Right? I was like, I've never seen these before. Why is this a thing? And I look and I see that there's a dungeon that is in the Game Boy Advanced version of this game if you've beaten 4 swords. So I tell RiRi and I tell another Zelda player of ours, her name is Kildashika, I tell them about it. And I'm like, I have to go play this. I have to figure it out. We beat 4 swords just the other day. I'm playing this. So the next day I hop on stream and I did the whole game in like 5.5 hours from start all the way through that secret dungeon.
And vanilla with dialogue. So like not shortcuts like we have in Rando.
Yeah.
No quality of life changes.
Yep. And so yeah, that's I would consider that's probably my personal best, just playing the straight up game.
Yeah. Took you like about 4 hours or so?
I mean, well, I said 5.5 hours from start to finish all the way through. So
I texted y'all when I was playing this game for the first time, and I was like, my mind is blown. And you guys apparently were having a back channel text, like,
yeah,
we were like, what could it be? And I think it's because we turn off dialogue. And I think I might know what your mind blown thing might be.
What do you think blew my mind, RiRi?
Is it when you rescue one of the sages, she says something about combining the bloodlines of the hero and the sages to strengthen them? No. Okay. I was like, because that's a weird thing. That's a lore thing.
Was it that the things that the enemies that you have to hit with the hammer so that you can go past them kind of look like Knuckles?
I thought they looked like Diglett.
I always called them Monty Moles because like the chain chomps, Monty Mole. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's just a mole.
Yeah, I call them Monty Moles.
So I did not talk to a lot of the NPCs in like the intended order.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first encountered Flute Boy, I had not talked to his father.
Oh.
And Flute Boy has a striking resemblance to Link. Like, he looks to me like Link with brown hair instead of pink hair, right? I mean, he's got the Hylian ears, right? So he's listening to God while he's playing that flute.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the Japanese version, he's called Ocarina Boy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm playing this game that I know came out in 1992. And I thought, because when you first encounter him, it's a great moment. You go into this kind of, secret little hovel in the woods, and animals, they're scurrying out of the way. And then there's just this beautiful flute music. And there's a boy who I thought was Link playing an ocarina, and then he fades as if he's time traveling. And I was like, holy crud, is this an Ocarina of Time reference years before they made that game?
You got it wrong. You got it reversed.
Yeah.
Ocarina is a reference to this.
Right.
I mean, and honestly, if you want to look at it as a theory, you could, because technically this game is like the first out of any of them.
Well, yeah, in the Zelda timeline, this one is is early.
Yeah.
Is this location the same location that in the Dark World you get the shovel?
Yes. And so he turns into a Korok.
I never found him in the Light World, but I stumbled into the shovel.
So we should tell for people who haven't played this game, like all two of you, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past does this really ingenious thing where they make the game twice as long by giving you the ability to travel between light and dark worlds. And it's the same map, but with different enemies, different dungeons, some buildings are different. But this was entirely a programming trick, because by limiting the color palette of each tile and each pixel, they were able to basically have a game with a secret second game layered over it the whole time. And so this is super cool. And this kind of interesting wrinkle about Dark World is that when you travel there, is it that the curse of the Dark World turns you into what you're like on the inside? Is that the curse of it, or is it just always that way?
That is sort of the dialogue at the top of Death Mountain when you're first going to the Dark World and you don't have the Moon Pearl, so you turn into a bunny.
Right.
A little pink bunny.
Which caught me off guard. I was like, whoa!
I think the bully says something like that. He's like, yeah, we change in this world. I'm a ball because I can't decide what to do. Something like that.
Yeah. I really appreciate it. One of them was like, oh, I'm a monster because evil greed. The other one's just like, I turn into a ball. And it's like, what is with you as a person? That's what
So I guess Link inside is a soft-hearted little fuzzy wabbit.
Yep.
There's no way to save the ball because he just gets bullied for eternity.
Oh, at the end in the credits, he's a human again.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yep.
Link's wish with the Triforce is to make him no longer bully, but I was like, and the bully just keeps kicking him, and I'm attacking the bully like there should be some way to stop this, but there isn't. Can you guys explain though why he goes from this little anteater kind of creature to a tree? Because it seemed really sad.
It's more like it was better for him this way, and it's very Greek mythology, right?
Yep. Because also with people that are good and they end up going there, they're suffering.
Right.
So that's kind of like the same thing, like with the smith that gets turned into a frog. You know, he doesn't want to be there. He's suffering. You end up bringing him back. Whereas this guy is basically, he's like, I know I can't get back. Here's my shovel. Like, you know, find my ocarina for me, and so that way it can be heard again. And so then you do, and you go back, and that's at that point he's just like, my time's up. I'm a tree.
He finds peace, but he's in the credits.
Yeah,
he's in the credits normal. And there's another tree in Hut. There's another tree guy who's basically like, I'm just a tree. This is weird. I hate it.
Yeah, these little trees can talk, and I kept expecting one to be important. I guess I don't know if that ever happens with a secret.
Oh, they didn't just throw bombs at you?
They can talk?
One of them can talk.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of a prelude to the Deku tree, right? Like the Deku tree being the talking trees.
You can see the beginnings of that idea, can't you?
Yep.
And actually, the Deku tree has sprites in the game that are unused. If you hack it, like they're in there, they just never used it.
And the Deku tree is what again?
It's a giant talking tree.
It's a mainstay after Ocarina of Time. You will see the Deku tree in lots of Zeldas after that.
Yep.
Remember Grandma Willow from Pocahontas?
Yeah, that's the right
kind
idea.
of like that.
More or less.
Or the tree that's in Kirby.
Oh, yeah, Mike knows that one. That's our next episode. The Wispy Woods tree. That's just a big talking tree. But it's an ally, right? It helps you.
Yeah.
He's a guardian ally, yep. He's a protector in several of them. He's the reason that growth happens. He's the reason the Kokiri live in the forest protected in Ocarina. So yeah, he's pretty important.
It's a beautiful game. I love all the symbolism and all like the guardian spirits and stuff. It's such a neat game. So I have a quick mini game for y'all. We're gonna do a quick mini game minute because that was a perfect time for it. Since the Dark World turns you into sort of your inner creature, I used Microsoft Copilot AI to research all four of us.
Oh no.
Oh boy.
And the AI was asked to take what it knew about each of us and to give us our inner creature.
Oh boy.
So I thought it would be fun to show us the 4 animal spirits that we all are and see if you guys can guess who's who.
Oh no! What?
There is, according to AI, one of us is an octopus, one of us is a Chinese dragon, one of us is an anteater, and one of us is a mantis shrimp.
I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
A mantis shrimp.
It looked like a giraffe, but like with really tiny legs or something.
Yeah, like a
it's
weird caterpillar. Like, what is that?
This feels like this
Oh.
is really what you put into the AI. I feel like
Yeah.
that's a element here.
So okay, so you want to know how I did it? You want to know my method?
Yes.
AI knew about Butch and RiRi.
What?
All I had to do was say, take everything you know about RiRiYells and tell me what her inner animal would be.
Yeah, those videos are
Really?
public. They sure are.
Oh
They're
wow.
Our public profiles.
Am I unnerving you guys? Was this an invasion of privacy? We can cut this whole segment.
No,
I mean,
no,
no,
those
I
videos
just-
are public. That's
It just
not.
surprises me. So yeah.
Scraping with AI is a new thing.
So
Yeah.
like I said, tell me everything you know about the old switcheroo, and it's like, who? No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
It knew about you because of your astronomy work. And what I did is that I just described my career, my likes and hobbies and stuff, and then told it to create one. So do you guys have any guesses of who's who?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see if we can come to a consensus, and I'll give you a score out of 4.
All right. Well, right off the bat, what I know about, because what kind of shrimp you said it was a pistol shrimp, right?
Mantis shrimp.
Okay.
they're very colorful,
Yes.
and there's no cats, so
I was also thinking of there is one of the shrimp that has a way of moving its claws really, really fast to create extremely loud noises.
yells, RiRi yells.
So I'm only going with the dragon, possibly for me, one, because of my love of Dragon Ball, and that has a huge connection to dragons. And on top of
Really?
that, like, yeah, oh yeah, Shenron's a
And
huge
balls.
thing there. Yeah, and balls.
Hey, so when you make a wish on Butch's channel, a giant Shenron appears.
Yeah.
Giant dragon.
And that's the other thing too. Like a lot of times, my starting and stopping screen has the giant dragon Shenron on it.
Okay,
So the clips that are saved.
solid theory. All right, what about the anteater and the octopus?
That is a weird short story. That's what that is.
It sure is.
The octopus looks sinister. So of the two of us, that's gonna be me.
None of these are spacefaring.
Right.
Yeah, none of these are spacefaring, so I don't know which one might be Mike.
So the Chinese dragon was indeed Butch.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I was the mantis shrimp
Okay.
because I said that I like to play pickleball, and so some like the fast reflexes, and it's very colorful. Mike was the anteater because apparently he is observant and patient, I guess. And then RiRi was the octopus, but that's because RiRi. But hold on, RiRi, let me explain. Microsoft AI said that you were a wolf, an eagle, and a honey badger. And I said, okay, give me a combination of all 3 of those. And apparently you get octopus.
RiRi is capable of using tools.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
It was almost reassuring how badly it did on that one. Because like, okay, we can still beat the computers for a few more years.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried about name my spirit animal Microsoft edition. I'm good. I do think honey badger's kind of on the nose though. I'm not.
That
gonna
does
lie.
feel.
Yeah,
That
honey
feels
badger.
Yeah.
When you
right.
said the 3, I was like, honey badger's right for sure.
Honey badger is kind of. I kind of can't argue that one. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, wolf? I literally have cat ears over here, but okay, all right. My light up cat ears mean nothing for AI.
I mean, octopi are really just the cats of the sea.
Octopodes.
Octopi, the cats of the sea.
Yeah, they say
Yeah.
that.
No. That was not a yes or no question.
I can see it. They're sneaky little creatures that can get into almost anywhere and like to, just be, sneaky for the sake of being
You
sneaky.
know what? They're also like the smartest animals under the ocean. So
You've heard the story about the octopus that was in an aquarium and was getting out at night and eating fish in other parts of the aquarium and then sneaking back.
I did hear that, and he would get
Yeah.
back in his tank so they wouldn't suspect him.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
clever little octopi. Let's get back to Link to the Past. Stay on topic, Mike. There's so many. I couldn't believe it until I tried to get an image here. This is from ZeldaDungeon.net. The sheer variety of enemies and obstacles.
Mhm.
And look how wonderfully illustrated they are. Like, you can see what it is.
Yeah.
They did it so well.
There's 122 of them if you count even the obstacles.
It shows on this that the like is here, right?
Oh, that's rude.
The like isn't even in the game unless you play the Game Boy Advance and you go into the secret dungeon. That's the only place the like shows up.
You have to have beaten 4 swords.
Yeah, like does not show up in this game at all on the Super Nintendo version.
Nope.
And so when you saw it, Butch, recently, you're like, oh my God, likes are back.
Yeah, I was like, holy cow.
We went, ugh, I hate it. Why? No, put that in there.
Did anyone have any favorites or any like least favorites? I think for me, I really liked the Igors. I think that's what they're called, the Cyclops soldiers, because
The ones that move opposite you?
yeah, and you have to shoot the arrow into their single eye. It's so satisfying to get that bullseye, literally. Well, I guess not literally, not a bull, but anyway, like, just to take them out in one. And I really hated the dead rocks and the buzz blobs, because the buzz blob, it's like if you strike it with your sword, you get electrocuted. And I forgot every time. Every time I was like, "Wah!" And then the dead rocks, I'd be running through the map. And when you hit them, they turn into rock. Can you kill them? Does a bomb take them out?
Nope.
They're invincible, Butch?
They're just, once you hit them, they're a rock until they come back.
Did anyone have any strong feelings about any of the enemies?
I hate those stupid hands.
The wall masters?
Wall masters are the worst thing in Zelda.
I always hate
Mhm.
those hands.
The sky cabbages are my most hated enemy for sure.
Yep.
The boulders falling off of Death Mountain, we call them sky cabbages.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, I got to call you out. I'm like, I don't see Sky Cabbage on the list.
Yeah.
No, those things will ruin my day. Absolutely.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, the wall master is this giant hand that just falls on you. And if it catches you, it takes you back to the start of the dungeon. It doesn't hurt you, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a practice against staying still for too long.
Although I feel like even I was moving around and it was still coming for me, right, Mike?
Yeah.
You do got to listen for that like half-second cue of noise to move.
Yep, it's especially when you're trying to rush and get something done. There's one in Skull Woods where you have to move a statue to get onto a block, and so you're sitting there pulling this, and at the same time it's trying to come down, so you got to back away and then make sure you don't get caught. Otherwise, you'd have to reset that puzzle and that room all over again, and it's such a pain.
I hated that one especially.
I just feel like this is something that they've not really got enough credit for, because I remember like when Pokemon came out, you're like, there's 151 Pokemon. Can you believe it? But like if you've played the original Pokemon, that's 151 JPEGs. Like
Yeah.
the Pokemon are just single images. These are all animated, and RiRi said, they're detailed and they're cute and they're scary, and like I just love the enemies. I also love the bosses.
Oh, the bosses are very good.
What makes them so good?
Just the fact that each one of them has something different to offer, and you have to use the skills that you've learned along the way. The Armos Knight, you get the bow in that dungeon, so it teaches you like, hey, this is where you use the bow, and it's very effective against it. The Helmasaur, you get the the hammer, so it's just like you make sure you use that.
I use the bombs. Thank you, Butch.
Also valid.
Yep, you can use I learned that in a rando run, actually, because I didn't have the helmet. And I like to play where the bosses are randomized, so you could have any boss in any dungeon. And I kept getting the Helmasaur King, and I'm like, I don't have a hammer. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. And I put a bomb down, and it worked. And I'm like, that's interesting.
Take a note.
Yep. The worst one on this list, though, is Blind.
Blind can suck it.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Blind is terrible. And in a normal game, like if you're just playing the game normally, he's not bad. But when you're playing a rando and rando decides you to give the items to, hey, you're going to the Dark World, and guess what dungeon is open in the Dark World for you only? Guess what? That's Thieves Town. And so you have maybe 6 hearts and you have no tunic. So if he hits you once, you're losing 3 hearts. Good luck.
I think the most frustrating boss is Moldorm, though. Poor Mike.
God.
I watched you. That was rough. Keep getting knocked off the edge. Oh.
It's like the centipede thing that like is like,
Oh.
I think the frustrating part is like if I get knocked off that edge and it starts over, he's back at full health,
Yep.
Mhm.
and I'm not.
Yep.
you can always rewind, Mike.
And the game has the gall to put 2 of them in.
Mhm.
Yeah. For some reason, that's like I feel like the boss music is always the same, right? It's the boss fight thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But every dun 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 or whatever it is, I always
Mhm.
picture the Moldorm just wiggling around like, "Come here, you bastard!" Gonna
He
get you."
absolutely wilds out. It's not fair. There's
Yep.
a couple of tricks you can do to to keep yourself on the platform. But yeah, it's not like you're dying necessarily. It's just you have to start the fight over and over and over again unless you have your controls down perfectly.
Well, also because right before that, there's that reserve of a bunch of hearts that you can pick up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I was not. There's like, oh, I'm approaching the boss. I'm only passing through this way once, so I picked up all the pots because I'm like, there may be something else useful in here. And he's like, nope, this is a heart. This is a heart. This is a heart. This is a heart. And so I collected all the hearts. I was like, okay, whatever. That must be if you're like much more leveled up in terms of hearts than I am currently. And then I fell back down there. I'm like, oh, that's why that's there.
Yeah.
I wish I had saved those.
And of course, they don't come back unless you leave the dungeon.
Yep.
And you have to go all the way back through again.
Or if you die, which I got very good at.
Or if you die.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Always an option, yeah.
Death is always an option and possibly a solution.
Yes. Those bosses also do fit where they're at because, like I said, I do that rando boss shuffle. And if you get Moldorm in any other castle when you do that, he's not that hard because obviously you're not falling off.
It's the platform.
Right. It's the platform itself that makes it tough. And then the same thing with Mothula, like, you know, how you're in that moving pit and the spikes are coming. I've gotten Mothula on any other dungeon and it's just like that dead. You know, it's that whole moving pit and everything that makes it tough. So the bosses where they're at in their dungeons just work well.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to Trinex. I just love, first of all, the idea of it, this 3-headed rock dragon and one fire head shoots.
Oh, it's a turtle.
Oh, turtle, duh, because it's
It's
turtle.
Turtle Rock.
Yep.
Yeah. But, you know, the fire head shoots the fire, and then the ice head shoots the ice, which doesn't hurt you, right? But it just makes you slip. And so it's just like, and obviously, you know, you use the ice rod on the fire head and the fire rod on the ice head.
We say obvious now, though, right? At the
Right.
time,
Yeah.
they were the ones that started the trope of knowing, of course, you've got to use the red on the blue and the blue on the red, right? You
Yep.
know?
But I think though, like Butch, actually both of you guys just touched on it, as I think what part of what makes this game flow so well is that the dungeons have this very recognizable and reliable pattern of step 1, find keys to unlock more of the dungeon. Step 2, find a big key that will give you an item that can get you to the boss, and then that item will probably be helpful in said boss fight. And I just think it's just a really satisfying gameplay loop. I think the items are the star of the show. I think that like just having so much equipment, so many options, and yeah, they're not all equally valuable, but like what a repertoire of abilities. Does anybody have a favorite?
I like that they called one the Power Glove.
I don't know if I think this game predated the Power Glove you're referring to.
I don't know the order. I just like that happens.
It's
The
so bad.
The Power Glove came out with the original Nintendo.
Yeah, so Power Glove it's definitely a reference.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And actually, it looks like it. Yeah.
Mhm.
I always called the gold version the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, obviously.
Oh, look at that. The Titan's mitt. Yeah. That's such a dope moment too when you can pick up the huge boulders.
I think you are spot on saying the items are the star of the show, especially if I'm imagining there are probably quite a few people who have only played more modern Zeldas as they've grown up and they haven't been able to go back and play the old ones for lack of system, lack of backwards compatibility, right? So if this is your first time going back to this old game, you're going to be so delighted to see all the old familiar Zelda items you know and love. The bow, the boomerang, the hookshot, like it's there. The Megaton hammer, or the magic hammer in this one, right? Like there's also brand new items that are super cool. The medallions, there's not a lot. Well, I suppose they're a little bit like the Nehru's Love and like Din's Fire from Ocarina. They're a little bit like the spells that you pick up, but like it's very familiar in a lot of ways, and I think that's so cool. Strength upgrades, right? Like the gloves, the ocarina, obviously. Like that's so cool. The fact that it's called a whistle here or a flute sometimes cracks me up.
Yeah, we know what that is.
Any video game nerd can't see anything but a blue ocarina. Like, that is it.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, looking at this, you know, a lot of those are very useful. There's some that aren't, and you brought that up, but like the bee and the golden bee, you can use them on a screen, and that's it. Like if you're in, you know, being surrounded by enemies, you can pull it out, and they'll attack the enemies. But if you move screens, then it's gone. So it's not that useful, you know. In fact, like anytime that I'm playing a rando and I get it, I'm like, okay, dump out the bee, let's go. And the nice thing though, I will say for the GBA port and doing that secret dungeon is like the Cane of Samaria got more use, which it does a little bit in the main game, but they definitely made it so like, hey, this thing gets a little bit more love. You get to use it a little bit more. You got to think a little bit more on how to use it. Because like the Cane of Burna, like you can use it to cheese some bosses.
That's what I did.
Or get through some difficult areas, but you don't have to use it. In fact, like my last playthrough, I never picked it up.
Yeah, no, in the vanilla game that he just finished, he had an empty slot for that item because he just never bothered.
Nope.
Let's just go over them real quickly for people who haven't gotten this far or played the game before. Cane of Burna surrounds you with this like spinning energy that will protect you but also damage enemies.
Right.
And the Cane of Samaria is a really interesting item because it creates a physical block that you can use to press buttons. It will go down conveyor belt, and then when Butch, is it timed or you have to press the button again?
You press the button and it'll explode into 4 directions, which can damage enemies, but can also be used to do those color switches. And that's actually one of the puzzles that you have to do in that other dungeon, the dungeon of the Four Sword, is you have to get a block down a conveyor belt and hit the button at the right time so it pops so you could get past the color switch.
Those are Dark World things?
Yes, the Four Sword Palace, whatever you want to call it, is in the Dark World.
No, the canes.
You pick up the Cane of Burna in a cave on Death Mountain.
Yeah.
You pick up the Cane of Samara in a dungeon. Yeah, it's a Dark World dungeon.
Okay.
Yeah, Cave of Burna is in Spike Cave.
Yeah, I don't remember if it's Dark World or Light World, but it's definitely a cave.
Well, so you guys have been referencing several times this Four Swords dungeon. So I think it's time to get into our segment that we are going to call NintenDISorDAT. So I think we feel pretty confident in that this is a pretty good game. I feel like we're all kind of vibing with it. But we need to have a podcast within a podcast called NintenDISorDAT, where we here at the Old Switcheroo compare all the different versions of the same game available on the Nintendo Switch Online and let you know which one you should play if you're going to play it. So for today's Nintendo Decision, we have the original Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo and the Game Boy Advance re-release in 2002, which is available via the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. They are very similar, but there are some noteworthy differences, the biggest of which is a secret dungeon that you can play, and it's sort of an alternate ending of the game, right, Butch?
I mean, it gives you more credits and more stats of like what happened in the game. Because like if you just beat the original on the Super Nintendo, it does like it shows like, oh, it's all happy and everything's back to normal, and then it does the credits. Whereas when you beat this one, it shows kind of like what's going on in the Dark World yet. Now that things have kind of gone by, and then they give you stats of like how many times did you die, how many times did you swing your sword, how many times did you shoot the bow, like all those different things that they didn't give you in the original game. So that's also added on top.
Hey, I see that guy down there. What's that? It's familiar.
So I grabbed some screen grabs of Butch's playthrough, and RiRi, you just played this recently. Brand new Link to the Past dungeon. You guys have just experienced in the past 24 hours. It's kind of a big day for you guys.
We were shooketh. And we all immediately said, I have to play that right now.
What's your impression?
I wasn't going to play the GBA version.
Yeah, I wasn't either. And like I said, I was in Discord with them, and I said it out loud. Like I didn't message them. I said it. I'm like, there's a secret dungeon. And they were like, what? I'm like, yeah, we have to do this.
Well, and especially because he says this 2 days after we all just beat Four Swords for the first time. And the legendary reason of no one has ever beaten Four Swords that's a big Zelda fan is because it was incredibly difficult to get you and 3 friends with 3 Game Boys and 4 link cables together to play it and beat it. And so it was ahead of its time. Now with online multiplayer, boom, got it done in 2 hours. We all celebrated, had so much fun. And then Butch comes out with this little bonus tidbit. Hey, guess what? Since we just beat Four Swords, we can get in an extra dungeon if we play the Game Boy version.
Yep.
So we all immediately ran to do it.
Yep.
I saw though in the chat, where you said like this dungeon is basically just one puzzle room and a boss gauntlet.
Yeah, it's 4 bosses with a little puzzle room right before them, so it's kind of a boss gauntlet.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that would have 2 rooms. I think like 1 or 2 of them did.
Yeah.
But basically it is a boss gauntlet, but it's not in the sense that like if I beat like the first and second ones, and because you can do them in any order. So if I beat the first and second, let's say I die or I have to leave the dungeon, the 4 sword, like those colors of those swords I still keep. and then I can come back. Like I can go restock up on potions or fairies or whatever and come back and do it.
What he's referring to is that you have to get the 4 different swords to get to the final boss, which is 4 different Darklings.
4 Darklings.
Correct.
Yep.
So the bosses you face before that are like remixed versions of ones you fought in the previous game. You have Argus, the Helmasaur King, Mothula, and Blinds again. But like with Argus, instead of pulling the clouds off, you pull off those little electrical balls. So that way when you pull them, sometimes they can electrify and you swing and you get hurt. So you got to be patient and watch when they're not. The Helmasaur King actually has 2 phases where you knock his helmet off, and on the second one, you have to shoot the eyeball, and that'll kill him. Mothula, instead of having 1, there's 3 of them, but 2 of them are fake. So you got to find out which one's the real one.
And the fake one spawns bees.
Yeah, the fake one will spawn bees, so you have to kill the bees, which I soft-locked myself the first time I fought that boss.
He did, and it's on video.
Yep, because for whatever reason, the real one flew up, like way up there and got stuck. And so I had to reset completely. That was great. And then Blind, instead of like when his head comes off and it's shooting the balls and then another head pops up and he keeps going, that one you have to hit back onto his body. So then you have to injure him enough again, and now there's 2, and you have to get both of those back on his body. And then eventually it's 3, and then you beat him. And then with the Darklings, like you start off with the green, and he's fairly easy. And then as you work up the colors, they get more and more difficult, and they add more and more moves. And like I think the 3rd and the 4th one, they'll use like the cape. Like if you go to do like a spin attack, they'll pop out and then they'll pop back in. And so it's challenging. It is tough.
The puzzles were harder too.
Yeah, the puzzles were very, very tough.
They were unusual in that like the puzzle solutions were nowhere in the original game.
Nope.
There was completely new ways of using these items.
How do you switch items on the Game Boy Advanced game?
As far as I know, the controls are mapped like you can't change the controller mapping. It's just you have to hit select.
Yeah. So yeah, you'd hit select, you'd have to pick it and then unselect.
Mm-hmm. Very clunky.
Yeah, like that's another reason why we like randos is because you can set it to the L and R buttons. So you can fast swap.
Let's make a call here because, the Game Boy Advance, in addition to this cool new dungeon, there are some other changes. You can save anywhere you want, but that's kind of obsolete because the Nintendo Switch Online, you can create save states.
But at the time on a Game Boy, that was necessary.
Yes, it was.
Huge.
On a portable system, right?
Absolutely, right. And then there was also some changes made to the audio. Link now makes noises when he attacks you. Ha, 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 and
it's straight up the copy of the Ocarina audio too, so it was very odd.
Yes.
To hear.
I thought it was really annoying at first, and I quickly got used to it. I quickly tuned it out.
See, I was the reverse. I enjoyed it at first, and then I'm like, okay, this is starting.
It got more annoying.
The falling I liked when he fell. I was like, okay, because this happens not as much, but every time I'm swinging my sword, I'm like, okay, I get it.
Right, yeah.
I get it. It was a cool little thing at first, but now shut up.
They made a couple of changes to make the game easier to get through. There's a couple extra rooms where they give you, extra items and hearts and things. And they also tried to make changes to make the story easier to follow. They make you watch the opening cutscene now instead of only popping up if you don't press start. And they changed the iconic Uncle's death scene where in the SNES he says, "Zelda is your," and then trails off and dies. Now he has some line about your fate will always be together. But I did get a good laugh watching Butch encounter the Blind, or just Blind, or whatever his name is, in Four Swords Dungeon, because they totally faked you out. But when he's playing, he's like, "Uncle?" And it's the uncle character who's back, and he like does his whole little speech again, and then he becomes a boss. And it was just to see you just be like, of course it's Blind.
Well, because of all the bosses coming up that were possible, he knew Blind was one of them, and he hates Blind.
I hate Blind with a passion. But the funny thing is, they show him dying, right, in the Super Nintendo,
and he just disappears, like gone.
Right. But even then, in the Super Nintendo version, at the end in the credits, he's back again,
dancing around. What happened?
He's not dead.
He lived.
No, he didn't live. Link.
Where's he been this whole time?
Yeah,
Link brought him back with. Isn't it Link's wish? He gets the Triforce, and that's his wish.
I mean, I guess. I guess I never really is referred to like this is what I wish, I guess.
No, there is no specific wish, right? He just wishes the world back to the way it was. And does that revive the uncle? I don't know.
I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
It's Endgame. Like the portals come back and the uncle steps through. And So what's the call then? Now that you guys have played the Game Boy Advance version, it has this extra dungeon, it has a couple of changes.
It's so minute.
Yeah.
And the extra dungeon, again, is only available if you can find 3 other people to play and beat Four Swords with you.
You're right.
Which it only took us about a couple hours, and we were messing around most of that.
Yeah. We were throwing each other and hitting each other and all that.
It was pretty fun.
I think the other factor in that, though, because when we played together, you guys all got to have fancy swords from having played the game.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. As soon as you get the Master Sword in A Link to the Past, you get to use it in Four Swords.
Yeah.
And so I would probably say from that, I think I would have to go Game Boy Advance, because if you're going to check out Four Swords, it carries over.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was also told by someone in my Twitch chat, there was something you could kill that you cannot kill in the SNES version, but you can kill in Game Boy Advance.
Was it the thieves, maybe? Because you can't in the Super Nintendo version.
You can kill the thieves in the Game Boy Advance?
I don't know. I don't know if you can. I didn't try.
I thought it might have been the wall things or something.
Wallmaster? You can kill Wallmasters.
Yeah, well, you can kill Wallmasters on the Super Nintendo, so it's not bad.
Is it that they come back on the Super Nintendo and they don't in Game Boy Advance?
They do come
They
back.
come back on GBA. They came back
Do
on
they?
me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like the GBA version, they don't show up as frequent, though.
Yeah, I feel like it was kinder in minute ways, right?
Yeah.
All I know is that there was something very obnoxious, which covers a lot of this game to me, as far as enemies, that like I was struggling with. And someone's like, oh yeah, just kill that. And someone's like, you can't. And it's like, wait, you can't? Well, you can in the Game Boy Advance version.
So I think, Mike, I think you got a good segue. I think we got to start complaining about this game because we've been too lovey-dovey on it. But before we do, we got to declare NintenDISorDAT. I vote Game Boy Advance. I think that the option of the extra dungeon is neat. I think that the controls, it took a minute because I played the Super Nintendo one, and the layout, because Game Boy Advance did not have 4 face buttons.
The button layout is different, and you cannot change it on Nintendo.
Yeah.
But it prepared me for Four Swords, which is the multiplayer spin-off. And so I think, spoiler alert, I adore Four Swords. And so I think because that game is so good, play this version of Link to the Past so that you don't have to adjust.
And things carry over.
So Mike votes Game Boy Advance. I vote Game Boy Advance. You guys are purists. Are you going to join the
They
bandwagon?
ruined Ice Palace, and it was already terrible.
Yeah. That's
They changed.
my,
The biggest change to me was Ice Palace.
yeah.
Because it makes it easier?
No.
No,
I think it makes it harder.
I don't know if it made it harder because we're so used to the old way, and it just threw us for a loop, and we weren't having it, and just brain didn't want to function, or if it's like just different.
Let's say someone has no idea what the heck Ice Palace is. What are you talking about?
It's the 6th, 7th dungeon. It depends on the order. You can do it in either order,
Yeah.
but it's a lot easier if you do it after Misery Mire,
Right.
because you can this part that changed in Ice Palace, you can shortcut with the red cane that makes a block. You can't shortcut it with the block in the Game Boy Advance version. They completely rearranged the puzzle of it.
Yeah.
So I think potentially for the first time in a while, we have a listener vote, right, Mike? Because it sounds like you and I are Team Game Boy Advance. These two are Team Super Nintendo. Are we deadlocked? I have to ask the listeners.
I admit I'm Super Nintendo out of pure just like familiarity.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I feel, and I want to say, I would say Super Nintendo just for the fact, if you've played the Super Nintendo version, stick with that one, because
Yeah.
the Game Boy Advance, it does yet has the 4-sword dungeon. It was very cool. Like, never playing it before, I was like, I love this. This is awesome. But as far as like, if you've played the Super Nintendo version before, you're not really getting much out of the Game Boy Advance version. And the Ice Palace was enough to, because even if you don't have the shortcut, the puzzle is basically making you push a block down to be able to move onto a button, right? In this one, you have to do a color switch, and you have to go back through like,
You gotta loop the dungeon.
yeah, you've got to
Backtrack.
re-loop the dungeon again
Awful.
to get back, and it was a pain.
It was.
And like RiRi said, it wasn't necessarily harder, but it was more steps that I felt were very unnecessary.
And the thing is, walking in Ice Palace is a pain in the butt because it's icy and slippery,
Yep.
and you fall over the edge and you run into an enemy, and the enemies respawn in the rooms, and
Yeah.
the amount of hearts I lost over this stupid block.
If you've never touched A Link to the Past, Game Boy Advance, and you've got the friends to do Four
Yeah,
Swords, yeah.
If you have any interest in Four Sword, do
Okay.
GBA.
But we got to
What?
have a vote, though. So
Yeah.
all things considered, your personal preference, Butch.
Super Nintendo.
Okay, so that's it. So if you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and chime in on the poll or leave us a comment on YouTube. What's your preferred version, Game Boy Advance, or are you wrong and like Super Nintendo better?
Oh,
Okay. I'm baiting her.
Says the
I'm
guy
baiting
that
her.
likes Zelda 2.
Zelda 2. Oh, Zelda. You know I beat that one, RiRi? Did you hear? I went back and beat it. I finished that game.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Link to the Past is not perfect. I've got some complaints. Mike's got some complaints.
Yeah, let's we as people who play it a lot, nobody hates something like somebody who loves it that much, right?
Mhm.
So what do you hate? What do you hate, RiRi?
Oh, the clunkiness of the menu and the item switching in the vanilla game is absolutely atrocious. It would
is.
stop me from playing if I didn't like this game and everything else about it, because the gameplay is frustrating to switch items, and it's so easy in other Zeldas.
It's like it's a puzzle to switch items sometimes. We're like, I need that item over there, but if I go from here, I have to go up, down, left, and back around.
Yeah, why won't my controller just let me move over?
Just scroll through.
And on the SNES version, the bottles take up one slot, so you have to pick which bottle after you pick the bottle.
Mm.
GBA does separate them out a little bit nicer.
Mhm.
And the shovel and the ocarina share a space, even
Share
though
space.
you don't use the shovel after you get the ocarina.
I guess unless you want to play the shovel game a bunch.
Yeah, or if you want to dig for magic in the grass or something, but still, even then, it's part of that clunkiness.
It blew my mind that this game, except for zooming in on the map, never uses the shoulder buttons. And it's like, that would have been amazing to cycle through your commonly used items.
And that's what we do in randos. Yeah, that's exactly what we use, the shoulder buttons.
Yep.
I know Butch and I use Xbox controllers for our randos. It's way better.
Yep. Quality of life.
Although I applaud the sense of immersion in this game, I have a bit of a bone to pick with the multi-level dungeons. So a single floor can have an upper floor and a bottom floor, and it often creates really cool shortcuts because instead of having to go all the way back through the dungeon, now you just hop down, whereas previously you had to find a ladder somewhere to get up to the second story. But the dungeon maps have no way of communicating that to you. So if you have multiple levels but only one like top-down blueprint, and I get it's a dungeon, it's supposed to be kind of difficult to find your way through it, but I have a genuine architecture question, okay? If you have, let's say, you're on the third floor of a building, right? And then you go down steps to a floor below you. Wouldn't that be floor 2?
So in most buildings, and I'm thinking because Japan has so many skyscrapers, you have a landing between floors.
Okay.
And I think it's treating it like a landing, like a half floor.
So would you call that floor 2.5?
It's still on one of the, you assign it to one floor or the other, right?
Right.
I don't even understand what you're complaining about. Like literally what the thing the game did that you're complaining about at this point.
There are stairs that aren't reflected on the map, i.e. he's went upstairs, but I haven't changed floor numbers.
Right. Yes.
Is it on another level of things? Like, is it a series of rooms or is it just like between stairs?
So physics between the rooms does not compute. I will say that. Like,
right.
It doesn't work. It's a wibbly wobbly in there.
If you think of it, Mike, like if you think of like when you're in Hyrule Castle for the first time and you're in one of those side rooms and you could go up a ladder and there's like those walk paths, like you're still in the same room, but you're kind of up a little bit, but there's like the little walk paths that kind of go over. And so like if you go on the map, that's still the same room, even though you're kind of up a little bit on like a bridge and everything that's down.
I'll give you the perfect example, Mike. The perfect example would be the mall in Santa Clarita. Okay. Yeah. There's the top floor and the bottom floor. You get them with escalators. This game would treat that as a one floor building.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of times you can tell when they do that is because the ladders that are going up are in the same room, whereas when you're changing floors is usually it's a door or it's disappearing somewhere. It's a door that'll like loop you down or loop you up.
It goes into darkness. And so I think for us, we're just used to it. I don't think it's a con for us because we're like, that's just the way it is.
That's fine.
I thought about it as really that you've got a set of chambers, especially if you're thinking like a dungeon and I'm thinking something that's been excavated. You have a series of chambers on this level and you have a series of chambers on the next level. And where you are within a chamber is not the floor.
Yeah, I think it's more like a loft, basically.
All right.
If you step on a step stool, are you now on like floor 1.1?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I want a map for the step stool level.
All right. It's wibbly wobbly in there. It don't stack right. It's not.
Listen, someone in the comments, let me know you also had a problem with this. I took some beef. I had some beef, I guess, with some of the archaic ways that you had to find the next area. Like if you don't have Butch and RiRi in your chat telling you what to do next, there's some weird parts of this game. Like there's an ice wall that you have to break with your sword, even though every other dungeon you use bombs.
Not true. In Skull Woods, you use your sword to break vines to get in a room.
Yeah.
I wish that something had clarified that that was a thing a little bit earlier.
Right?
It looks slightly different in the area where you swing. I don't know.
I accidentally did that trying to cut something else.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're meant to kind of discover it, like hitting an enemy and like, oh my god, the door just opened.
I think it's, and then there's more of a question like, well, I passed a bunch of these already. Am I now not where I need to be?
You're on floor 1.5.
Feels like a situation where if the first time I encountered those, it required me to figure that out, it would have been less frustrating because I'm like, okay, that's now a thing I got to know about.
I mean, it does force you to fight Aghanim. You have to slash the curtain.
I guess. Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's right.
I don't know.
I feel like it's one of those things where if you look back, like she said, with the curtain, or you look at enemies that you fought, you can kind of deduce, because there's like a dungeon where there's like an eye, one of the Igor statues, right? And you have to shoot an arrow into it to get the wall to move. So and that's like, what, dungeon 4 in the Dark World? But if you think back then to Eastern Palace,
The green one?
yeah, you in Eastern Palace, you had to shoot the Igor to kill it, the red Igor to kill it. So then a lot, if you think back to it, it's like, oh, I have to shoot the eye.
And that's also, if you're a modern Zelda player and you're coming back, you know to shoot eyes that you see in dungeon. Like, that is a trope.
So then there's other things too, like this big skull in, like, I think it's the dark version of Lost Woods.
Knowing to burn it.
Yeah, but like, how would you even know? Like, it's like a weird skull.
Because it kind of looks like the other entrances, but different, right? Like the back of it. The back looks like an alien mouth, like from Alien versus Predator.
It's weird.
And once again, it kind of goes back to that whole thing. Like, you get the flame rod in that dungeon.
Mhm.
Right. So try your new thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got your new thing. You've got your new toy. How does it help?
But like, what about the gargoyle rock? Like, you gotta yank the trident out of his hand.
I thought that was really easy. Twitch just told me that I was doing it wrong.
Twitch
Yeah,
just told
that's
you. Yeah,
Play it like a community.
that one I would definitely say that if you don't know,
That one's hard.
I feel like that one, at least, like, I was looking at a map. I'm where this map says a dungeon should be.
Yeah.
So like, I was doing all kinds of, like, I dug a hole every spot I could in there. Because I'm like, something in here is what I need, but I don't know what.
So, okay, you guys can't argue with me on this. Can we talk about the Great Fairy and the curse?
I like your fat better.
Okay, but like, it's played as a joke. It's like, oh, I'm so cursed because now I'm a bigger woman. Like, this hasn't aged
Her
well,
face
right?
is also very differently shaped.
and that's, unfortunately, that's early Nintendo.
Yeah, and the Japanese culture too.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, even now, Japanese culture is, and I don't know how far you want to go into this. They still have like taboo with like trans people. Like, they have
okay.
clubs specifically for them, and people will make fun of them openly. Here we're more accepting, and and have that. Over there, it's still kind of like, I watched Super Sentai going back to Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Even like one of the newest seasons within like the last 3 years, they have a trans character in there to kind of be progressive, but at the same time, like, they're making fun of that character on the
it's
side.
the butt of the joke.
So, that's, unfortunately, that's Japanese culture.
I do think they kind of course corrected with Breath of the Wild, because now, like, they're bigger women.
the
but
big
they're
ladies are the good ones.
They're so juicy.
It's terrifying.
But going back to what Butch said, though, like, Link's body language makes it very clear he's not into it. And so
Mhm.
it's just kind of like, I don't know. I am nitpicking because Link to the Path is pretty fantastic. Do we have anything else to say in praise or criticism of it before we go on to our discussion of the multiplayer spinoff?
I do have a few little trivia tidbits that you didn't
Ooh.
touch, if you're interested.
Do it.
So the Japanese version, actually, once Link to the Past was done, they actually have like continuation of it that was part of like an internet radio show that they did. You could download these episodes, and then they would play American music along with it. And they were just and you had to be on at those times in order to play it. So like, once that time was passed, you couldn't get it again. It was not accessible, whatever. And so one of the big things, and one of the reasons I know about this, is because Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up was like the hit song for one of the episodes. I think there was 3 episodes that you could do, and that one was like a big one, and people just absolutely loved it over in Japan. As us, we see it as this meme and getting rickrolled.
At the time, it wasn't a meme.
No, at the time it wasn't.
Now it's funny.
But it was one of those things, like, they absolutely loved having this where they could listen to American radio as they played along to these new adventures in the Zelda game.
That's dope.
That makes the commercial make a little more sense, why it was like a dance number.
Yeah.
It's like somebody watched Michael Jackson videos and thought this is it.
This is it. Yep.
Which is weird because I think that was way later.
Anything else, guys?
Things that you light with that lamp should stay lit longer.
Fair enough.
I could see that.
It's challenging. I don't think it's an unfair challenge.
I stopped lighting things because it was obnoxious.
I feel like I don't hit a point where I'm thinking, this is just bad game design. This is unfair. They must have play tested it thoroughly to get it in the state where it's in.
Mike has the weirdest bones to pick. He's like, Street Fighter needs more streets. Link to the Past, top 8 game of all time. But you know what? I don't like the lamps. Yeah, thanks.
And I think the thing is too, once you get used to it more, it's not as bad. Because now when I play, and even like my playthrough this last time, I rarely even lit the lamps unless I had to for a puzzle. You know, I just use my lantern because 1, I know where I'm going, and 2, because it's just like I feel this is enough to kind of get me through.
That's what I started doing more, just because I felt like it wasn't enough time for me, so it wasn't actually helpful, and then I'd feel like I'd have to go back, and it became a whole thing. I do appreciate, at least as far as everything I saw compared to previous games, there's a little bit about realizing that's what things meant, but in terms of, like, the first Zelda is a lot of, like, you have to know that you have to blow up the 3rd tree kind of nonsense.
Right.
This, you have to be paying attention, and there's a lot of stuff that you can miss, but it feels like there's actually like visual indicators of stuff one way or the other.
It does a good job telegraphing what it wants you to do without outright telling you.
Yeah. Or at least giving you the range of possibilities. Like there's a lot of things I found where it's cutting, I knew I could cut through stuff and I was just doing it, and they were like, oh, this has a thing. Like I had several spots on while I was playing, it just like I'd pull up a rock. It's like, oh, this opens up to something. I didn't expect that. So that provides a sense of discovery in a way that was a lot more satisfying.
Yeah, it definitely left it open for that discovery element.
And we should clarify, Mike's trying to play this like old gamers, like did back in the 90s. So, for the first Zelda and Zelda 2, he did not use guides. He did not use any help. He's kind of traumatized, I think. So to have the game help him along, I think went a long way for you.
Yeah, it allows it to feel like I'm kind of discovering stuff to some extent, and some of them are, cracks on walls are a certain level of, okay, you can kind of notice they're there, but some of them where it's like slight discolorations would be like, oh, wait a minute, I think that's a thing. How do I get to that thing?
Yeah, there was early on when he was in the well in Kakariko, I had to tell him like, hey, you have to bomb this spot on the wall because it's just slightly darker, right? It doesn't have the crack or anything. It's just slightly darker. And so that I helped him out to get that. And so that way from the future on, he knew like if there's that spot, to look at it and possibly bomb it.
Yeah, I think I found one of them because I just realized that like stuff on a map wasn't quite lining up.
That's what I was going to point out. Like I discovered fairy rooms because I haven't been to that room. Why haven't I been to that room? And you go to where it connects and you're like, oh, it's a bombable wall.
Or I think I may have noticed it in playing it and then afterwards realized that there was a tell for it. I think in the village there's a bombable wall, and from outside there's an additional room on that house.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yep, there is.
It's the brother who's like, I locked my brother in the other room, and it's like dark.
Not even that one. There's one in the village. The brothers are south of the village.
Yep. It's just a little hut on the bottom corner of the map that there's no entrance into it. There's no indication of anything. But if you go up and put a bomb there, like it blows open and it's got pots in there to get like rupees or more bombs or whatever.
There's an obvious extension on this house that no other house has on that side. So
yeah, it was very much like I got into it and then it came out. I was like, oh, the map actually does reflect this is there.
4 Swords, real quick. I think we touched on it a lot, so there's just a few things I want to go over. We good to move on?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, so our second game for today is going to be the multiplayer spin-off that they added to the Game Boy Advance port of Link to the Past called Legend of Zelda 4 Swords. It was released in 2002 for the Game Boy Advance. We will kind of go over the game description because we covered it's a up to 4-player Zelda game. But instead of a big open world, you're just going through isolated dungeons and trying to get through them together as friends. We don't need to discuss the box art because it's the same as the other game. It's just the gold box with the old logos.
Yep.
The 4 Swords logo this is its first appearance, and it's neat, but pretty straightforward.
I'm pretty sure that's like Times New Roman font too. Like phoned that in.
Sure did.
At least it wasn't Comic Sans.
It needs some papyrus.
No.
It's hard to figure out the official title of this cartridge. If The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past includes new multiplayer adventure Four Swords, there's no way that's the whole title. So the common consensus I found online is that this game is called The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and Four Swords.
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, this game is notable mostly for being its firsts. It was the first multiplayer Zelda title. It was the first time a third party published a Zelda game for a Nintendo console. Right, RiRi knows all about the real side-scrolling Zelda games we don't talk about. The animated ones. What system was that? Was it TurboGrafx?
CDI? Is that the
CD,
one?
yeah, the CDI.
Freaking
Ugh.
CDI. Oof.
That wasn't a Nintendo console. Capcom developed Four Swords for the Game Boy Advance, and this is also the first appearance of the iconic Wind Waker aesthetic, which we talked about being more cartoony and being really lovely. And you guys said, well, I guess rebut this or support this, but in my research, at time of release, this was the beginning point of the Zelda chronology. That this is the furthest back moment because this is
Body is older than Ganondorf, yes.
right.
Yes.
Yes. So this is happening in theory before any of the games we played to this point.
Yes, but only as a matter of convenience, I believe, because it
Right.
it breaks everything by having 4 links.
So is this the only point that the title for A Link to the Past makes sense? Because once it's bundled with this, now that game is A Link to the Past.
Right.
Because it's attached to this game. But that doesn't make sense until they added Four Swords.
Until 10 years later.
Yeah, if you look at the Hyrule Historia, which they had to make because people were clamoring for a timeline, I'm pretty sure, and RiRi, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure A Link to the Past is like the first one in that order.
It's high up. I can't. So it splits into 3, so it depends on which timeline you're talking about.
Well, Ocarina of Time is where it splits because that's where he either succeeds, he fails, and then where he gets sent back as a kid.
Right. So like, do you mean like first in the split timelines, or do you mean first overall? Like,
because what it is that it's one timeline and then it splits into 3 and then like they converge back and like split again.
Well, only recently converges back.
But like in that very top where it's just one line, I believe A Link to the Past is the top one on there.
So it's Skyward Sword.
Oh, okay. I forgot about Skyward Sword.
RiRi taught me that last time.
Yeah, because that's like the first one, and then Minish Cap is where you see Vadi first, and then in Four Swords.
But this game predates Skyward Sword. So when this was released, this was the first events in the Zelda story.
You're right.
I don't know about you guys. Four Swords, I'd never played it until this podcast because, like RiRi said, back in the day, you had to get 4 Game Boy Advances, this crazy link cable. It would create this weird net of link cables.
Look at this map configuration. They wanted children to do this.
Yep.
I have seen simpler Feynman diagrams.
It's wild.
You had to daisy chain the link cables.
And so while I'm playing Link to the Past for this episode, they announce in their Nintendo Direct Four Swords is going to be playable. And it's such a pleasant surprise. I adored this game. I'm a big fan of Gauntlet and X-Men Arcade and co-op games. And I think that Four Swords does so much right in that you're working together, but you can cause just enough mischief to sabotage each other. Butch and RiRi, I'm told the first time you guys booted this up, you just immediately started swinging your swords.
It was as though all 4 of us took a breath and just went chaos.
Yep. Because like none of us had played it. Like
perfectly in sync. We were just waiting on our chance.
I hadn't played it. RiRi, her husband, and then our friend Kilashika. None of us had touched this before at all. Period. So we're like, let's all do this. Let's all play it together. We're all pretty much Zelda fans. Let's experience it. And like she said, without missing a beat, we just swing at each other.
And then we discovered we could pick each other up, and it was game over. Everybody went in on the ledges. Everybody went in the lava.
That's the genius, though, is that if you could damage each other with your swords and your items, it wouldn't be fun. You'd be killing each other too much.
You do knock each other, which frustrating.
Yes. You can knock each other into the water, off the cliff. You can pick up, and as I did to Butch when he was just in my way, threw him into the middle of like a fire pit. And there's all these great little touches, like when you get caught on fire. Now you're running around, another player can put you out by hitting you, but if you touch them, now they're on fire. And we did this lava boss where all 4 of us were just on fire.
Literally all 4 of us at once on fire, running around with our butts on fire. Everybody going different directions.
No 2 children are not on fire.
Yeah.
I do have a correction for you, Butch, on the Hyrule Historia. So yes, A Link to the Past is the beginning of the timeline, but it's after the split, and that's the fallen timeline, because
Oh,
if you think
okay.
about it,
Alright.
the Dark World, the Twilight World, like any Zelda where there is this alternate reality that's darker, what's the sequel called? To A Link to the Past. That was on the DS.
Link Between Worlds?
A Link Between
Yes,
Worlds.
Link
That
Between
one's like,
Worlds.
that's along that timeline where you have,
Yeah.
if you have multiple existences, right? So that's the beginning of the timeline for that after Ocarina. So yes, when it was released, it was the beginning.
Okay.
However, in the timeline, Skyward Sword is first, and then it splits at Ocarina, and then Link to the Past is the first on
you're right.
that branch, if that makes sense. Just wanted to be clear.
Getting back to Four Swords, when you look at it, it might seem like a smaller game. You have just 3 dungeons and then a final dungeon. There's no overworld to explore. There's not really a whole lot of lore.
There's no story.
There's no story. But as I don't think RiRi knew until we started talking about it, this game is randomly making the dungeons each time you play. And that's really cool because now you can play it multiple times with friends, and it's not like the person who knows Zelda like the back of their hand, like you two, would just run to the end. Well, no, it's different every time.
As randomizer players, you're telling me there's a built-in randomizer?
It's cool.
Yep.
Sign me up.
Yep.
Do we know how much variation that has?
Well, so here's the interesting thing. I played this first with my cousin James, who, hey, James, give a like. I know you're listening, buddy. We just played 2-player mode, and it was just me and him, and you can beat the whole game with just 2 people, and the puzzles and dungeons are different because now you don't need all 4 people, and it's just a masterclass of game design, the way that you get only 1 item and you can swap out items, but what that means is that to solve puzzles, okay, you need the bombs, I'll get the boomerang, you get the cape. And so you put the bomb here and then knock it into the fire with the boomerang while the person up there jumps over with the cape. You have to coordinate, which makes it so frustrating that voice chat is such a hard thing to do on Nintendo Switch, unless, that's why we did it via Zoom. But I just love co-op games, big brain moments where we're solving puzzles together and okay, you try this. Oh, that worked. It's so cool. And then the rupee system, you are sharing money. And when someone dies, they take from your wallet to come back. And the more people die, the more expensive it is. So there's this sort of shared debt that gets kind of stressful in a fun way, I thought. And then at the end of each level, they announce who contributed most to the wallet. And I forget, RiRi, I won one, right? I beat you at least.
Oh.
You beat Butch too. Why you gotta ask me?
I like it would annoy you more.
Get out of here. I believe Mike won. No?
Yeah, Mike won one of them.
They do have a point.
I'm calling you out, RiRi, because when I popped off, you just flipped off the Zoom. So that's why I'm just rubbing the, But I mean, guys, Four Swords, I love it. Do you guys love it?
I was so pleasantly surprised by how fun it was, but I do think it's a group of friends, great friends who love Zelda and know exactly how to Zelda, having a blast for a couple hours. This game was so ahead of its time. It was such a shame because at the release, this was pretty well panned as a failure. Nobody talks about this one.
In its defense, I have no idea how to play Zelda, and it was fun.
Yeah. So it's good. It was the configuration. It was the having 4 Game Boy Advances connected. That was just not a likely scenario. Not in my life. Not in anybody I knew.
Nope.
We never even bought it because we're never gonna get that together. You know what I mean?
It's a fun curio that we get to enjoy now.
But all you were missing was this, the online multiplayer. That's it's just part of the package. As soon as you put this in the mix, boom, it's a gem. It's an absolute gem.
It's a shame that this is locked behind the expansion pack. The Game Boy Advance games require the extra $30 a year or whatever it is to play, because I could see this taking off. I want my brothers to play this, but they don't have the expansion pack. So,
well, I know what you're getting them for Christmas.
Yeah, I guess a temporary membership. I did have some bones to pick with the boss battles because, for example, the Manhandla, it's this big plant boss, and you have to strike the petals of the monster plant that match your color. But then in the final stage of the battle, you have to hit it. And my cousin and I must have tried this thing for 10 straight minutes, just not standing at the perfect distance for our sword to reach it without us hitting it. It felt like kind of a programming. You could have maybe done this one thing better. You guys didn't seem to struggle with it. But the ice boss, the big ice snail.
Did you get stuck on the wall?
Yes.
Yes, we got stuck on the wall too.
So it's this giant snail. He's called Derazol. And the tutorial says dash into the ice wall. But if you dash into the ice wall, you freeze.
Yeah.
What they mean is knock him into the ice wall.
Yep.
But that's not what it says.
Sure it is. Like when you dash something on the rocks.
But when we did it, he got stuck, and there's a point at which there are 4 protrusions sticking out of him, and you can only see one other person's color. You can't see your own. And one person's color was so up against the wall they couldn't hit it without freezing. So we got a little bit stuck for a while until the game just broke it out.
And it's weird because the dungeons are so well designed for 4 people, and it just feels like it's weird that the bosses aren't as smooth as butter.
Yeah, like this ice wall mechanic was not it. I mean, I like the concept of you touch the wall, you freeze. Like that's a great idea for a boss room. But the execution, that one was not great.
Yeah.
I like the idea of, oh, you can only see that color, so you got to tell, okay, red, yours is on the bottom, green, yours is on the left.
Yeah, it's neat. Any other thoughts on Four Swords, either in praise or criticism of it?
I mean, yeah, I feel like because this was, and obviously we're in the future of it, but at the time, like if you could have gotten your friends together to play this, being the first Zelda game that's multiplayer and having that accessibility of being able to just pick up and play, and yeah, it's only for a couple hours, I think it's great.
It's genius. It's just ahead of its time.
You didn't have that prior to that, right? You didn't have the multiplayer.
And the fact that they made the infrastructure for that to me is a little crazy, but hey,
yeah. You didn't have that, and it's sad that like I didn't have a friend, let alone 3 others to help me play this.
You do now.
I don't have a friend, let alone a group of friends that necessitate 4 swords.
Right.
That all have Game Boys? Are you kidding me?
Exactly. Had a Game Boy and had a link cable to play it.
And the link cable was extra money, and my mom was like, I'm not buying you a link cable. I bought you the game. You know what like they don't get it.
Right. And so because there is the other 4 swords eventually that was on the GameCube, and once again you needed more like connecting with Game Boy Advances and stuff, and it was all kinds of technical, so it was a little bit more advancing towards that. But I feel like if they tried to do something again like this, especially with the online capabilities, I think it would do massively successful.
Oh my gosh, I hope this is foreshadowing. Like we can only hope.
No, this is 4 swords.
Oh, get out.
You can't kick me off my own podcast.
Give me the Link's Awakening remake art style and give me this, right? Get 4 of us together in that and doing little mini games and mini dungeons and stuff together and make it even bigger. And that way, I would love it. I would love to have this.
You could do it as a games as service. Like if it was a random dungeon every time and you leveled, they got stronger weapons and stuff. Oh,
my prediction is they'll do it as a 99, like they did Tetris 99 and F-Zero 99. That's my prediction.
99 swords.
99 swords.
Oh
yeah.
my god.
She's calling it. She's calling it right here.
And this is a test run. How many people play this? How many people like it? If they pick this up and like this, we can develop something in that vein.
And my only complaint really about the game is like, it's wonderful, it's accessible now, but it's still not as accessible as it should be, because this is great for couch co-op. But if you all came over to my house, you'd all still need your own individual Switches.
Right? Oh, yeah. We have 2 Switches in one household. I had to make a Wi-Fi hotspot with my phone because you can't have 2 Switches on the same Wi-Fi playing online with other people that are also online, because it won't do local and online.
That was such a pain.
It was baffling. We spent about 20 minutes of technical difficulty when we finally got it going. It was like, we didn't think we were going to do it.
Yeah.
And for one of us, Kill, the Sheikah, who we referenced, she's also a big Zelda fan of ours, and spoiler alert, I'm recommending her for the Ocarina episode, but she has played every Zelda game. The only game she has never beaten is 4 Swords. So this was her final Zelda game to beat. Like, we were intense.
Yep.
And then, of course, we joked around and threw each other off ledges for 2 hours.
As you do.
But, and then she did it.
And I feel like now, since we're in that age of, it's more advanced. I don't know if they could do it, and it'd have to be a back end thing or whatever. Like, give us a chance to maybe do it ourselves to experience it. If so, especially with having that secret dungeon in A Link to the Past, give us kind of maybe that opportunity for the people that still maybe don't have friends, or are readily available to play it, because it is such a good thing. It is good for being kind of like an add-on, almost like a throwaway multiplayer that a lot of games will do nowadays, it's good.
It was a genuine delight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Butch, if only there was a special mode in Nintendo Switch Online where like it would unlock stuff for you and you wouldn't have to. Oh, there freaking is. It's called the SP mode. They did it for like the first 2 years of Nintendo Switch Online and they would unlock stuff for you. And now that we're getting these great games that need it, Nintendo has completely forgotten about this feature. Come on, Nintendo. Anything else to say about Four Swords before we go to our verdicts on these two games?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
All right, so guys, let's go ahead and declare each game a NintenDO or a NintenDON'T. It's been a long journey, waxing poetic about these two games, but we're ready to call it. First of all, Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Butch and RiRi, you're obviously NintenDOs, okay?
Let me say it though.
Okay.
Ask me.
You know there's different tiers?
Mhm.
I'm a Super Nintendo.
Okay, because there's a higher one.
Oh yeah.
But this is on the Super Nintendo.
Sure. But we have established that there is a NintenDO 64.
Well, it's a Nintendo 64,000.
Dang. Butch, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, or Nintendo 64?
Nintendo 64. If you can only ever play one Zelda game in your lifetime, this is the one to play.
Wow. Okay. Mike, I don't know where you're landing on this. Talk to me.
I think I am going Nintendo on this, which I think is the first Zelda game to get that from me.
Yay.
The game made it easier to play, and certainly everybody that stopped by and assisted on Twitch was also helpful because it got me past those rough spots that I think are probably the same points where you would go and check a walkthrough. I would have somebody like, oh yeah, no, you have to go hit that rock over there.
And this game has aged incredibly well. It's fun to play, it's fun to explore, and it's really hard not to appreciate the creativity and just the passion that went into this. It's such a well-made chef kiss of a game. It's a Nintendo for me. I want to go next for Four Swords because I adored this game so much. And this is my style. In our Zelda episode previously, we talked about how Metroidvania is my favorite genre, right? Co-op multiplayer and arcadey kind of games are absolutely my genre. This, I think, is the Super Nintendo. And my hot take for the last one is that Zelda 2 was a better game than the first Zelda. My new hot take is that Four Swords is better than Link to the Past. Fight me, RiRi. It's so good.
I'll fight you.
Better than Link to the Past?
It's so good.
It does have more swords.
It's got more swords.
Four Swords is in A Link to the Past. The Four Swords Palace is in it. It's part of it.
I'm saying the multiplayer co-op, like throwing Butch into the fire and like Mike blowing himself up by accident.
That's not the game. That's us. That's our personalities.
Yeah.
That's us having fun as friends.
I mean, there you go. Then you guys are Super Nintendos.
That's my argument. You don't need any personality to have fun with Link to the Past. You can be, really boring and still love it.
I don't expect to get a lot of support on this one, but I really also think a big part of that is like how much of a surprise it was.
It is delightful. I remember thinking this was a stupid game and walked away going, I need a sequel. That was amazing.
So good. So where's it land on the Nintendo scale for you, RiRi?
Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, but not Nintendo 64.
No, you gotta find your group. You gotta find your buddies. You couldn't go play with 3 randoms. They just leave you behind. This is a community game. Like how the first Zelda you were supposed to play with your community. This is the epitome of that. They were just way too early. They were about 10 years too early.
I mean, Nintendo Switch Online, you literally can't play with randos. You can only play with people on your friends list.
True, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah, I get you. Butch, what about you?
Yeah, I would say Super Nintendo, and again, a caveat of make sure it's your people, because if you can have fun with it and goof around and get it done, but still, goof around. Because if you get somebody that's like, I just want to do this and I want to play it, then it's not now. It's definitely the people that you play it with.
So I'm going to stir the pot one last time. Mike, I want you to join me in saying that this game is better than Link to the Past. He's going to do it. Watch, he's gonna do it.
You bullied him so bad in this game.
No, don't listen to her. Don't you listen to her, Mike. Look at me. Don't look at her. Look at me.
Well, real quick, before you answer that, Mike, can I have your guys' address? I just want to talk to you. Like Jaymo. That's it. I just want to talk to you.
You just want to talk.
Yeah,
You had your chance. I was in your state.
Yeah.
Mike, what's your call on Four Swords?
I am going to go Nintendo on this.
I've never heard Mike so positive about 2 games. I'm so happy. I'm so excited.
It happens from time to time.
Right, especially being Zelda games.
I'm excited you played as much as you did. That's amazing. Like, I'm so glad you went through because I saw you having frustration in places where It is frustrating, but you persevered because you were having
Mhm.
fun anyway.
It gives you enough that it doesn't feel as crushing.
I'm so glad.
Like there's a definite way you can structure that where it's like, this is frustrating and I give up, and this is
Yeah.
frustrating, but if I can
Yeah.
get back to the part that's frustrating, that makes it a lot more playable.
But is it better than Link to the Past?
I do not think I have enough to say that this is better than A Link to the Past.
He's not saying no. He's backing away from the argument.
There's error bars here.
Just trying to be controversial for views down there. God
Right.
almighty.
I am trolling you guys,
I know. Just
but it's just
I'm gonna
They're
go play some
lovely
Burger
games.
Time. I don't
I-
know.
we got some
man.
Game Boy Burger Time.
I'm gonna go watch Dragon Ball Evolution and play Burger Time.
I swear to God, Riri. I thought you were on my side here. Listen, Zelda 2 isn't just a bad, like, if it was a regular game, it wouldn't be bad, right? But as a Zelda game, it's just bad.
We're talking about Four Swords.
I know, I'm just,
We all liked these games. We're all saying
Yeah.
they're great.
They're delightful.
They are delightful. Aren't they wonderful?
are.
Guys,
They
we're
are.
going to
They're
call
good.
that game over for today. The final scores are Nintendo's for both of them, Link to the Past and Four Swords. Just wonderful games. Butch, RiRi, thank you so much for joining us once again. Before you go, please tell our listeners where they can find you. RiRi, can we start with you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitch. My name is RiRiYells. You can find me on TikTok with the same username. I would love to see you in chat. Feel free to come lurk and learn some Zelda randomizers with me.
That sounds excellent. And Butch, where can our listeners go to see you, Power Ranger?
also on Twitch under SSJ3Butch. I do a lot of Zelda randomizers, and I just did a vanilla playthrough, but I also do a lot of story-driven games, so if that's up your alley, come on in. I also do a lot of horror games, so if you want to see me get scared, I'm also there for that.
That's awesome. And everyone, join us next time when Mike and I will be sucking up more of the Nintendo Switch online catalog in our epic quest to research and review them all. Next on the docket, Kirby Superstar and Kirby's Dream Land 3. Also, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcharoo.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, Discord, YouTube, TikTok, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we would literally love to hear from you. Please like, comment, subscribe, and review. And as always, thank you for listening to The Old Switcheroo. We've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone. You guys hate me now? I just firing it up for the listeners, you guys, but I really do mean it though.
I know you do. That's why
I
I'm
know.
giving you guff for it.
That's why you're mad.
That's why I just want to come talk to you.